And welcome in, ladies, gentlemen, and football fans of all kind. No, your eyes do not deceive you. Vince is on holiday today, so I will be substituting in for him. But don't worry, it's not just me today. We do got our regular cast of characters here joining us to talk about all things going on in fantasy football. We will start with Brian Germanaro. Brian, a rough Sunday for your team, but it's going to be fun coming up.
Yeah, I mean, we have hope now with Jackson Dart. I guess that's all we can say about it, you know?
Exactly. They threw him to the wolves, that's for sure. Didn't give him an easy
Oh
first
my
start.
God,
Couldn't have
yeah.
waited 1 week for the Saints. Let's go play the number one defense. But it's going to go great. It's going to be like Justin Herbert's first start against the Chiefs, just without someone getting
I
stabbed.
hope you're right. I really hope you're right. I love the positivity. I hope you're right.
Because I picked up the Chargers defense in fantasy, and that's my luck this year. I pick it up,
Oh,
then that defense gets shredded. So you guys are welcome. I'm responsible for this.
I will send you. I'll send you money if that happens. I'll send you a Christmas card.
I'm holding you to that. And joining us also as well as our good friend Kevin, whose Seattle Seahawks are taking on Thursday Night Football after a very strong start to the season in their own right.
Yep, I'm quite pleased with especially that last game. And, 49ers have had all these injuries. It's too bad they couldn't happen in the first game. But, you take what you can get. And they play Thursday night, Arizona, divisional opponent on the road. So we'll see what they're made of. I'm excited for the game. So, and I'm excited to be here because we got some stuff to talk about. Absolutely. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So
absolutely, we got ourselves a busy show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our opening segment. All right, and that's going to now take us into the opening segment. That is the lead block. And for today, we're going to start things off we're talking about two studs, maybe some guys that we didn't expect that really kind of stood out in week 3, as well as a couple of duds, some guys that probably hurt us, cost us a chance to win and some money. And we won't include the injured guys because that'll be me crying about CeeDee Lamb for the entire show. Yeah. So we'll exclude the injured guys. Brian, I'll go and let you kick it off for us. Let's start with who you have for your two studs of week 3.
Well, my first one is a guy that I've sang the praises of a lot in this show, and it's Hunter Henry. Eight receptions for 90 yards, a couple touchdowns, 11 targets. He's kind of this season Ben Drake May's go-to guy. Had 7+ targets in 2 of 3 games. I think he leads all Patriots receivers in targets. So with tight end being like as shallow as a position it is, Hunter Henry is just, he might not be like the sexiest name in the world, but he's just that reliable guy week in, week out, will get you those points. And my second guy is Mario Hampton, who kind of had his first breakout, 19 carries, 70 yards, a touchdown, 6 receptions, 59 yards. Kevin, you would know this. Last week on this show, we talked about how rookie running backs have been struggling. Outside Cam Scatterbo, we hadn't really seen much from anybody, but here's a Mario Hampton finally having that breakout game, and hopefully he can build on it from there.
Absolutely. And I believe Hunter Henry's a leading scoring tight end in fantasy football for 3 weeks. If I'm not mistaken. If not, he's right up there. So he's been a stud. And of course, with Marvin Hampton, Najee Harris, unfortunately, the Achilles exploding in the middle of a play where Justin Herbert has to jump over him and complete a pass. Good on Justin Herbert, my goodness. But so that in theory should mean more work from Marvin Hampton. So if you got him, if you've been sitting on him, now is the time. If you just sold him last week, well, shoot, I'm sorry.
Nothing you can do there.
Exactly. And Kevin, let's go and get your two studs from week 3.
Okay, so my first stud has to be Jordan Mason, Minnesota over there. 16 rushes, 116 yards, 7.3 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns versus Cincinnati. And so he was the biggest contributor to that victory right there. And pains to say for me to say this, but Ricky Pearsall is another stud from the 49ers, caught 8 of 11 passes, 117 yards, and a touchdown versus Arizona, 21 fantasy points. And so nobody that I know of saw 21 fantasy points coming out of Pearsall. And so he gets the stud treatment, even though I don't want to do that. So those are my two studs right there.
Absolutely. Jordan Mason in a very interesting game where they scored twice on defense. Carson Wentz threw 2 touchdowns. Jordan Mason ran for 2. Like, they just found very unique ways to beat the brakes off of the Bengals. They held absolutely no expense on it. So for me, a couple of studs out. We're going to go with one. We're going to go with Alec Pierce, the receiver for the Colts, 4 catches for 67 yards. Not a huge day, but considering he's a guy you usually put in your flex spot just because you need to fill somewhere, I think that's always a safe bet. That's about 12 points that you can't, and that's without scoring a touchdown. So we're going to throw him on there. Another stud we're looking We're going to go with Tyquan Thornton for the Chiefs because if you started him, good on you, because I never in my wildest dreams would have, and I still won't pick him up because I don't trust it whatsoever when the other guys come back. But if you had the onions, as Troy Aikman would call them, to start him, that worked out great for you. The big plays, the touchdown, just the opportunities he's had, and depending on when Worthy and Rice come back, we'll see. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying if it's really bad, think about it. So that's what we got for studs, but now we have to talk about the end of the spectrum. We got the duds. Kevin, I'm going to go right back to you. Who we have some duds, not including the injured guys.
Okay, so it's almost impossible to go through and pick 2 duds because there were so many of them this past week. But I'm going to go, my first dud is CJ Stroud because it's been absolutely horrific. They scored 10 points against Jacksonville. He's got 2 TDs on the season, 3 interceptions in that game. He threw 2 picks against Jacksonville, and they don't have a win. So that's just awful all the way around. And then you got to go to Atlanta and to divisional game, Carolina. It's not like they were playing Tampa, okay? And they got nothing whatsoever. So my lead dud has to be Michael Penix in that game because not only did he didn't play well, he got relieved. Already getting relieved in the second game is never good, but no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and so that was just awful all the way around. I could just litter the Carolina Panthers, Atlanta, I'm sorry, in the dud section because there were so many of them. But he's the quarterback, and he's got to take his share of the hammers because he's got to be better than that. So those are my 2 duds right there.
You could make a case that was the worst quarterback's game of the season so far. Just it was erratic, wasn't hitting anything. He wasn't even moving the ball. Even if you were in one of those goofy leagues that gives you 100 points if a quarterback gets a tackle, he missed 2 tackles on one of those picks. So he didn't even get you that random 100-point burst. So he couldn't even give you that fun little boost to it. And then there's CJ Stroud, where I'm going to agree with you on that one because, fun fact, the Titans have scored more points this year than the Texans have. They're both 0-3, but it's crazy to think that the Houston with all those weapons, Nico Collins, the 2 Iowa State guys, I know the offensive line's meh at best, but with that defense, with what CJ Stroud did his rookie year, and since then not so much, you expect a lot more than that. So they really got to turn it around this upcoming week. So, Brian, we're going to go to you now. Who are a couple? There's a lot of duds to choose from, as Kevin mentioned. So let's pick a couple of them that just to focus on.
These guys didn't have great weeks, but kind of not had great seasons so far that I think we all expected. My first guy is Alvin Kamara, 18 carries, 42 yards, only 1 reception, 14 yards. We talked about Kamara as kind of the only guy in New Orleans you could kind of trust. He's been so consistent despite him getting up there in age. And this season, we just haven't seen that Kamara yet. And a similar story with Justin Jefferson, only 5 receptions for 75 yards. Granted, no, that's not a terrible day, but there was this hope that the struggles that Jefferson had early on in the season were just because of the poor play from J.J. McCarthy. Well, they put in Carson Wentz, who had a pretty decent day by all, standards, and even then, Jefferson couldn't have that big breakout game. For everyone that, built their fantasy rosters around Jefferson, he has left a lot to be desired so far.
Absolutely. If you took him in the most top 3 spots, you could be hurting for sure. And if I'm Alvin Kamara, I'm asking for a trade. Send me to the Bears. Send me to the Chiefs. Send me somewhere else where it's not embarrassing at this point. You're running into a brick wall. There's Spencer Rattler's getting the nice completion percentage for 13 yards and not doing anything. Like that place is a catastrophe. If I'm Alvin Kamara, I'm begging to get out of there because you could probably get him for 60 cents on the dollar if you're a contender team. I think still discuss issues. For me, I'm going to focus on a rookie who everybody loves, rightfully so, but except for the team he plays for, we're looking at Trey Henderson. I don't know why the Patriots hate TreVeyon Henderson. They did not run him right of the center one play this entire last game. I don't get it. He's getting the 3rd amount of carries. They barely use in the passing game. I don't know why they hate him. He had like 7 points, and that was because of the 3 catches. He's their most explosive receiver or running back. I don't know why. Ramondre Stevens is nice, but it should be a committee, not with him getting at least 50%, I would say. Not whatever it is right now. It's just abysmal. And
especially
the next one,
Stevenson having 2 fumbles. Like, you would think that would give him some more touches.
You would think so. You would think so.
It's the opposite way. You'd think it doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. The next one we're going to go with Jordan Love. I know the expectations aren't necessary. He hasn't had he's had a good season. I don't know if you had him playing, you had him going against the Browns. You thought, okay, it's a good defense, but that offense can't move. He's going to get a ton of opportunities. He'll get some decent points, and he really didn't do anything. It was through that pick in the end zone that obviously ended up kind of costing them the game a little bit. I think he had 10 total points, maybe 12. He did have the touchdown, but 183 yards, 18 of 25. You wanted a little bit more going against a bottom feeder as well. So I'm going to throw Jordan Love on there just because when what Lamar did to them last week, you were hoping Jordan Love could do 60% of that, not negative 8%. But that's what we got for studs and duds to start the week. But now we're going to take a little dip into the Terminator world, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to ask the bot a question, with our good friends over at Rotobot AI. All right, and for the question this week, the question we are asking the bot is, do you find yourself frustrated with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s fantasy production? This week, we're going to get an analytical reason to keep Marvin Harrison Jr. or if he should be traded. And, well, we got our answers, so we'll go and take a quick look here. Based on analytical indicators, it says to keep Marvin Harrison Jr. Projected to have about 80 catches, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Decent production, 21% target share, 31% air yards, a key role. Efficiency metrics seem to be pretty solid. Early usage confirms he's getting opportunities, which is all we could hope for after we saw last year. This was a key one, too. That upcoming schedule is very, very promising with Carolina, San Fran, maybe not so much Seattle, but Tennessee and Indianapolis, there are some opportunities there. So overall, they say that Arizona's offense is centered around Marvin Harrison. His volume, efficiency indicate a strong, reliable asset. They recommend keeping him as a core part of your receiving as a number one receiver. We'll go ahead and start with you guys. What are we thinking about that one? Brian, I'll start with you first. Do you agree with the bot or are we battling the bot?
I'm going to battle the bot on that one a little bit. While I think Marvin Harrison is a good fantasy producer and all that stuff, he's such a frustrating player because you can get so much more out of him, and Arizona is just not using him correctly. I maybe not trade him. Like, I wouldn't be like rushing to trade him, trying to move him no matter what. But for the right package, or if you want to go up there and get maybe a more elite wide receiver, I wouldn't mind throwing him in that package. I wouldn't think twice about it.
Absolutely. What really worries me, especially that last game, the drops. Those are what are starting to get me too. Like, it's one thing when they just don't throw in the ball, but now they are, and he's leaving something out there. But Kevin, what are your thoughts? Do we agree with the bot, or are we challenging that assertion?
I'm going to go with you, Brian, because I expressed some concern before even that last game because there's just something that's going wrong between quarterback and wide receiver. And that's been going on just not this year. That's going back to last year. So this is something I don't understand. If I'm Murray, why are you not throwing the ball his way? He's a talented guy. He should be able to catch balls, but it's just the offense is not flowing. And now they've got their running back. He's down for the season, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But I don't like that at all. That offense at all. I don't think going into a Seattle game, because the Seattle defense is playing outstanding. So if you're looking for him to come out of that game looking golden, I'm not going to see it. And he's going to have it. What kind of trade would you be able to get for him right now? Because he's just a guy to me. And so if somebody came, and in fact, there was a guy that I talk to all the time. He's like, should I trade him? Well, I guess you can try it and see what you can get back, but I don't like the reserves that you would get from him. So I think you just got to ride it out, and hopefully he gets better. But it's not looking good to me at all.
He's unfortunately developed, I feel like, into a matchup-based guy that you play. Like, where you draft him to play every week that he's healthy and active. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. You have to look at him playing like Tennessee and be like, okay, we'll take our chances here. The matchup's good. He's almost matchup-based, like a flex spot, which is very sad because it felt like coming out he was surefire. But we'll see. It's still early, still a young guy. But right now, I'm going to keep myself at arm's length. We're gonna keep a little bit of distance for that one. But you did mention a little bit of stuff going on in Arizona, both the running back going down, which is going to lead us now into our next segment, cover 2. For cover 2, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the injuries and some of the impact they could have on both the teams and fantasy moving forward. We're going to start with the one that hits me most near and dear to the heart that I've already complained about twice today. CeeDee Lamb going down, playing running back for a play against Chicago. High ankle sprain. Reports are from 2 to 6 weeks, it sounds like. Probably closer to 2 to 3, but with ankles, especially a receiver like him, you can never tell. They can always be problematic. So we'll start with you on this one, Brian. How cooked are the Cowboys now that he's injured? And is there anybody on the Cowboys you might pick up to take some of his spot if you had CeeDee on your team?
I think this hurts the Cowboys a lot because the CeeDee Lamb's a top 5 receiver. The offense kind of flows through him. Dak Prescott's a good quarterback, but he is that kind of quarterback that needs a little bit of help. He's not a guy like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen that can kind of do it on his own. So for that exploit, the Cowboys are definitely hurt a little bit. To me, I'm looking at either George Pickens or Jake Ferguson to pick up because Jake Ferguson has the chemistry with Dak Prescott. He's been in Dallas for years. He knows that system. He's a guy that he can kind of turn to. But at the same time, George Pickens was brought in to be the wide receiver too, to be the guy to kind of take the pressure off CeeDee Lamb. Now you don't have CeeDee Lamb. It's time for you to fill into that role.
Absolutely. And if Jalen Tolbert's been a name that's thrown out there the last 3 years, like he's going to be the guy opposite CeeDee. It just hasn't ever quite came to fruition. As soon as you draft him, it doesn't work. As soon as you ignore him, he scores a random touchdown. So he's a fresh one. Kevin, I'll toss it over to you next. What do you think with the CeeDee Lamb injury? How in trouble are the Cowboys, and is there anyone on the team you
Well, I think the Cowboys were in trouble even with CeeDee Lamb. And so there's not a whole lot of hope. And as we talked about before we went live, I have CeeDee Lamb on 2 fantasy teams. So I'm definitely pointing in the wrong direction. And I thought George Pickens would do some things this year, and he could still do that. But now he's going to have the top defensive back being switched over to him. And so he's going to have to step up. And it seemed like Ferguson had like 15 catches or whatever it was. So I think there's some potential there. And so if you've got him, or I can't imagine he's available, but there's some things going on with Ferguson that I think that I would like going forward. But Pickens, I've got him in another league, so I'm hoping he steps up. And but he's going to have to do it against the best defensive guy that the other team has, and we're just have to wait and see. The running game is not looking as positive as it was earlier in the year for the Cowboys, so it looks like misery land all the way around for the Cowboys. And if you're in fantasy and have him, you're just going to have to deal with it as best you can.
Or someone like me that has CeeDee and Dak. So I thought that'd be a good combination. And now my season's over already. But I'm also looking at Kevontae Turpin. Maybe if you have one of those really deep benches, something you can maybe stash him is like maybe he fills in some of that role. Don't give up anybody important. But if you have a deep bench, then maybe he could be someone to pick up that too. But next one we're going to look at is Arizona running back James Conner, now out for the season, as Kevin alluded to earlier. Trey Benson it looks like he's going to step primarily into that role. As I'm a huge Trey Benson guy. I've had him stashed on the bench. Not excited for an injury, excited to see more opportunities, of course. So I think it's going to be a very good fit. I'll go and start with you, Kevin. What do we expect from Trey Benson now in that RB1 role?
Well, I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself, but if Trey Benson is available, you want to get him in any way you possibly can. Even though, let me say, because I do not like him this week. With 3 days and going up against that Seattle defense, even though it's at home, that is not a good matchup for him this week. But long term, there's a lot of potential there. So if you can get him, get him. But just don't start him. And I'm like I said, I'm getting ahead of myself because this is my area of starts and sits and stuff. But excuse me, Trey Benson, like I said, I like him going forward, just not this week.
Absolutely. Brian, we'll toss this one to you. What are we thinking about Trey Benson this weekend moving forward for the Cardinals as new RB1?
I mean, like Kevin said, this week is hard. You just kind of get thrust into that, running back 1 role against a tough defense. I kind of take this as like a learning curve, but going on to the future, I think Trey Benson is going to be a very big fantasy option. I describe his situation very similar to Jordan Mason, we just saw had a big week this week. A really good RB2 stuck behind a good RB1. He's going to, take that chance and run with it. Might not be this week because it's a tough defense, but we're going to sit here in 5 weeks like, man, Benson's put together a string of some really solid performance here.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about all the issues with Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison in the last segment. The one thing they have done very well the last few years is run the ball. It's been a lot of James Conner. Trey Benson's done some good stuff in limited action. I think they're going to continue to do that, and he's a little more versatile catching the ball, which I think is going to be utilized a fair amount for sure. But those are the kind of the main injury headlines. I want to toss it to you guys really quick. If there's any other headlines we wanted to touch on before we move forward.
I mean, should we talk about Jackson Dart?
I didn't know if you were. I didn't know if you were ready to touch on that one yet.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I love Jackson Dart.
All right, then I want to make sure the euphoria wasn't off there. I want to make sure we were ready. It's a new thing, and you and Nate were already blindsided by it. So we'll start with you, Brian. How do we feel about Jackson Dart starting against the Chargers, not getting a cupcake going right in there against the Chargers?
I mean, I talked about it a little bit on the 30 Time podcast this morning. This is a panic move by Brian Daboll. Okay, I think I would say 80% of the Giants fan base is completely done with him. The other 20% is probably on the fence. This is, in my opinion, the only way Brian Daboll could even last past this season is if Jackson Dart goes out there and has that rookie of the year performance. That's the only, if he proves this year he could be the franchise guy, that's the only way he could stay there. I do not like his matchup against the Chargers. Like we said, Dart can be a really good quarterback. He's got a great upside, especially with that running ability. He could be good, but against that Chargers defense, I just don't think it's the best spot for the rookie. I know you're in your home and you're in like friendly confines, but you got a really tough team going up against you, especially with the Saints next week.
Exactly. And you have that offense you're going to have to go head to head with on top of it. It's with Justin Herbert and how he's playing. But Kevin, how do we feel about
him? Maybe that's like, all right, you know what? Herbert does that. I'm going out there and proving him better. And if that's the attitude Dart has, that's a franchise quarterback.
I want to set the over/under 1.5 headbutts between him and Cam Scatterby once they get going. I'm taking the over on that. Like they're a concussion protocol. Over for the headbutts. They're going to be in trouble. But Kevin, how do we feel about Jackson Dart getting his first start this week?
I really like his potential, but I do not like him going up against that Charger defense one bit. And we talked about this last week, and I touched on that the Saints game was the game you wanted to target, but I didn't think that there was going to be this rubber band effect that Russell Wilson, unfortunately, went from throwing for 450 yards to, 110 or whatever it was.
I think it just shows how bad of Dallas's defense is. They just gave him 37 points to the Bears.
That showed up against the Bears, so you got to take that into account. And I'm Seahawk guy. I love Russell Wilson, but it's time to say serenade on him. But if you're Brian, and you're a Giants guy, you just don't want it this week.
No.
And so, and I agree with you, Brian, that this is Daboll trying to save his job, but it's not going to work.
No.
And so you just hope that he survives this week. Survives the Chargers, because I really like what the Chargers are doing. And you talk about a tough road to hoe. You got the Chargers and the Chiefs back to back. And so I don't know, do they hate the Giants? And you think that the offices are in New York, that they love the Giants and Jets, but maybe not. To have this kind of schedule going on.
We have to play Philly back. We have to play Philly 2 or 3 weeks. And in between that, we have the Broncos. I think that's way harder.
Right. And so that's what I don't understand here. And so that's why I was targeting that Saints game, if they were going to throw him out there. But you can't wait for the Saints now. And so you just hope he comes out of that game with both legs and both arms and everything working correctly, and then go from there. So that's my concern, is this week is it's not looking good to me at all.
It's on the O-line. It's on the O-line to step up. And we saw Andrew Thomas come back. He played decent on Sunday night. Let's hope a game under his belt gets him, more football ready, and he could just grow from there.
Exactly. I feel like if Russell Wilson didn't throw it out of bounds on 4 consecutive goal-to-go plays, I've had to do just losing is one thing. I think that kind of was a shot in the foot. And like you mentioned, if Daboll's job wasn't on the line, I think we see Jameis this week. I think they don't throw Dart there, but his job's on the line. It's like, okay, I have to do something. Jameis it's gonna be fun seeing him throw for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 6 picks, and Malik Neighbors setting all kind of fantasy records. But like you mentioned, that job's on the line. He's he's got to try and buy as much time as he can, but I think it's going to end up falling on deaf ears for sure. But
I don't think he has a pass. Like, I legit think the only pass if Dart's the rookie of the year. I think that's the only way he could even have a chance of keeping his job.
they got to go 10-4 the rest of the way, basically, too.
Pretty much, yeah.
They got to make a playoff run, maybe like 9-5. I think just to be respectable, it has to be like, oh, see, it was just Russell Wilson who scored 100% of his touchdowns against the Cowboys in 3 games.
That's right.
Didn't score a touchdown in any other game. So maybe that gives you a cop out, but like you said, it's a bleak road ahead, that's for sure. But that's what we have here for Cover 2 and the NFL news. Let's go ahead and get into segment 3. Now we're into the meat of it. Now we're getting into the fun part. We are doing some rapid fire starts and sits. We're going to do about 3 starts and about 2 to 3 sits. We're going to break it evenly up by division. So, Brian, you're going to lead the way for us. You got the NFC East. Give us a couple of starts and a couple of sits.
All right, well, my first start might be a little bit surprised, but I'm going with George Pickens. I really think he's going to be the guy in Dallas. I don't think he's had the same numbers as CeeDee Lamb does, but I think he's going to have a really solid performance. My second guy is Cam Scatterboo. I mean, he's the lone bright spot for the Giants in that Chiefs game. He's complete taking over at RB1 even before Tracy got hurt. Now he's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks, so that role's only going to increase. And with a rookie quarterback playing, the Giants, I think, will lean more on a run game, a run-first approach. So I think Sky will have a big game. And then finally, Deebo Samuel. You know, they gave him 121 passing yards last week, the team the Commanders are playing. And Washington, he's been the go-to guy in the Washington system. He's jumped McLaurin in targets. I think Deebo has a good week. My sit-ums might be a little surprising, but I think George Pickens has a good game. I don't think Dak Prescott will have a good game. That Packers defense is really solid. And his old buddy, Micah Parsons, is going to be hunting him in the backfield. So he's not going to have a fun time back there. And my second sit-em is Saquon Barkley. The Bucs have yet to allow 100 rushing yards in a game. And I don't think any single back has had over 60 yards. So I don't see a great path for Barkley to have success.
And fun fact, they have, for his name eludes me, but that 430-pound guy from Florida that they brought in, he's finally able to practice. He's basically was cut, released, wasn't it? So it looks like they brought him in for specifically this week. Suddenly he passes to the test. So this guy, I feel like running is going to be difficult for pushing up.
Him and Vita Vea up front's a problem.
Like, you're going to have to go outside, and there's a lot of speed out there. But all right, next we're going to go to you, Kevin. And Kevin, you got the blessings of the NFC South, speaking of Vita Vea and squad.
Okay, so NFC South. So we're going to go with Baker Mayfield. I know that's kind of a cop-out right there, but he's done everything that you could possibly want. He's got rushing yards even. He's got passing yards. And so and you look at Matthew Stafford, 2 touchdowns he threw. So this is a prime matchup for him. We talked about Alvin Kamara. This is not the week to sit him going up against Buffalo's defense. Their pass defense is solid. Their rush defense, not so much. So you want to start him. And this is a blast from the past, Brian, but Sterling Shepard, type of the Tampa Bay, okay, wide receiver. Chris Godwin, is he going to play? Maybe, maybe not. But you've got Mike Evans, hamstring injury. So they're hurting at the wide receiver position. So I'm going to put him in my lineup, see what he can do. And my sits, I'm sitting everybody with Atlanta. Every last one of them, until they prove to me that there's somebody worth being in the starting lineup. I don't care what you can talk about, whomever you want with Atlanta. Robinson, you pretty much got to start him if you have him. But anyone else, I'm sitting them all this week. And so Chuba Hubbard, Carolina, not looking good. So I'm sitting him. And then Juwan Johnson of New Orleans has looked really good. If you picked him up off your waiver wire, that's really solid. But that Buffalo pass defense, they've got the number 1 pass defense in the entire NFL. So that's not a matchup. I don't like that at all. So I'm going to sit him. So those are my starts and sits from the NFC South.
All right, I like it for sure. I'm with you. The Falcons are on probation until proven otherwise. After what they pulled this last week, none of them get the start until they, besides Bijan, until they earn it at this point. So next up, we're going to look at the NFC North. So I got a couple real quick for us on the North. First, some starts. We are starting Matthew Golden. It's a little short. It's a little slow start to the season, but this is the week. It is finally happening. They get to play the Dallas Cowboys, which is a great get-right week for every pass catcher in the NFL when you get to play the Dallas Cowboys. Jordan Love needs a bounce back. Golden's been so close on so many of these deep passes like that. He's been like inches away. Like against Washington, he had a 96-yard touchdown that was just 2 inches away. Couple against the Browns. I think this is a great week to finally get him going, get him involved. Realistically, you could put all Packers receivers. When you play the Bears or when you play the Cowboys defense, everybody gets to eat. We're going to start Jordan Mason for a lot of the same reasons we mentioned earlier. The Steelers' defense for being the highest paid defense, has not been that stout this year. There's been a lot of room, both running and passing on. If you have Jordan Mason, continue to ride that train. Kevin O'Connell's gonna give him the ball. So I trust Jordan Mason there against that Steelers defense. And then David Montgomery for the Lions. If you have him, I think you pretty much play him pretty much every week as it is. But you get the Browns this week, and this isn't the Browns and the Packers. I think the Lions are kind of on that roll right now where they're trying to absolutely obliterate everybody in their path. And I think they're not gonna hold back on their Lake Erie brethren. I think they're going to take pedal to the metal on the Browns, and everybody's going to eat. So we're going to take Dave Montgomery because obviously you're going to play Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, and all those other guys. So if you have them, play them. And if you have Montgomery, play him too. If you have both of them, play them all. Some sits, we're going to start with DeAndre Swift. I know I just don't really like what we're getting out of him. I think this is against the Raiders too. This is going to be one where he's used a lot more for blocking to try and stop Max Crosby from eating Caleb alive. So I think they're going to try and integrate a little bit more of the tight ends and receivers this week. They're going to build off of last week. And DeAndre's a little bit banged up too. That's why he was a little banged up last week. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to have him just sit out. We're going to just put him on the bench this week if we can afford to. We're also going to sit we're going to sit all the Vikings receivers. If Justin Jefferson's obviously the anomaly, if you have him, you have to play him. Jordan Addison coming off suspension, I like that, but not for the first one. Like against the Steelers, we'll give him one more week. TJ Hawkinson, I don't really love. If I can avoid that, I'd rather avoid playing them, especially with Carson Wentz in there, which it's either a boom or bust. Last week they scored touchdowns in 7 different ways, so we didn't really matter. But we'll see this week. But I'm going to probably avoid the Minnesota pass catchers in this one because I think it's going to be a keep the ball on the ground type of game. But that's what I have for some of the starts and sits for the NFC North. So now we're going to go back to you, Kevin. We're going to go to your favorite division, the NFC West.
Okay, so my starts, shocker here, Jackson Smith and Jigma. You want to start him. Averaged 19.2 yards per catch. Going up against an Arizona defense that allowed 284 yards passing. So I like that. And Trey McBride of Arizona, we're going to start him. Seattle gave up the previous mentioned Johnson. 6 of 8 passes, so that's a start for sure. And I talked about Pearsall a minute ago, San Francisco wide receiver, catching 8 of 11 passes, 117 yards. Well, guess what? Jacksonville allowed Nico Collins to go 8 of 11 also for 104 yards and a touchdown. So those are absolutely go for me. Sits, we talked about it already. Trey Benson, long-term, yes. Short-term, absolutely not. And Marvin Harrison, we touched on him already. Until he shows that he's got some kind of chemistry going on with the quarterback, I'm not going to start him. And then my last sit is Tyler Higbee, tight end over there. Guess how many catches he had this week? That would be a big squadouche. And so there are tight ends that, there are a lot of, guys that are hurt. And when you're looking for somebody, this is not that. So you want to make sure you've got – he doesn't even need to be on your fantasy team, let alone your starting lineup. So I'm keeping him far away from any kind of starts right there.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Now, Brian, you got the AFC East, one that you hold near and dear to your heart. How are we feeling about this one?
So my first stardom is anybody on the Buffalo Bills, specifically James Cook or Josh Allen. They're going up against the Saints this week, and we've all seen what the Bills could do to inferior opponents. I mean, they completely dismantled the Jets a couple weeks ago. This is probably one of the best Bills teams we've seen in a while. Allen's well on his way to another MVP award. James Cook is becoming one of the better backs in the league. Any Bill you can get in that lineup, do it. My other stardom is Hunter Henry. I sang his praises earlier in the show, but going up against the Panthers struggled to contain tight ends all season. If Drake May is going to look his way, I think he's going to get the ball to him. Sidums, Breece Hall has not been able to find that magic we saw in week 1. I kind of thought that was him reestablish himself as that bell cow back in the Jets offense. Haven't really seen it since then. I've kind of been in a reduced role since then. I'm staying away. And then in the same game, it's Tyreek Hill. He'll be locked up against Sauce Gardner all game. I already don't love Tyreek this year because I think he's lost that step that made him so elusive. Now going up against a really good corner, I'm just completely staying away from him.
I'm avoiding pretty much all Dolphins not named A-Chain at this point. As much as
Pretty
I
much,
like
yeah.
Jalen Waddle, there's just so much that I can't really trust there. Next up, I'm looking at the AFC North, so we're gonna go run through these starts. If you have them, Zay Flowers needs a really good first 2 weeks. MIA against the Detroit, unfortunately. I think against the Chiefs, they need him. They need to bounce back. They don't want to be 1-3. Zay Flowers gets featured early and often. Quinshon Judkins, running back for the Browns. Not my favorite Browns running back. I think Sampson's a little bit better, but the Browns disagree with me. I think when you're going against the Lions, you want to give them as few possessions as possible, which I expect them to utilize the ground game, utilize both running backs. Basically, death by 1,000 paper cuts. He'll probably average like 2.7 yards a carry, but he's going to get plenty of opportunities and might rumble into the end zone in garbage time. Sits, we're sitting everybody on the Cincinnati Bengals, not named Jamar Chase. And really, if you could sit Jamar Chase, you would sit him too. They have the Denver Broncos defense coming off of what the Vikings just did to them. Jake Browning imploding. Nick Bonito and that pass rush is going to get after him. I don't know if they're going to be able to. They were in a shootout last year with Joe Burrow in MVP form, and they barely survived Denver at this point. And Joe Burrow is throwing absolute laser beams. And I've yet to see Jake Browning throw a laser beam this year. So we're just sitting all of them if we have the opportunity. We're going to sit Jerry Jeudy in a similar vein when I talk about the Lions. That pass rush for Detroit's really nasty. The secondary is a little weak, but that pass rush is going to get after. Flacco is less mobile than you can insert any superlative here, like a tree, a grain of sand, whatever it is. Flacco's not getting away from Aiden Hutchinson. That I don't trust anyone in that pass game. We're also it's probably going to sit Jaylen Warren. I think it's a rough one going against Minnesota. I think he's going to have to be used in pass protection because if you send him out on a route, that's only 5 guys blocking, and Rodgers insert immobile situation here against Brian Flores, this chaos defense. I feel a little uneasy with that one. So we have a little bit more sits in the AFC North than starts. But we're moving on to our next division, and this one's going right to you, Brian. We got the AFC South, home of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones. And his team has a lot of starts this week. So my first one is Michael Pittman, 6 receptions, over 70 yards, and a touchdown in 2 of 3 games he's played this season. He looks like kind of that leading receiver for the Colts. I think he's going to get you a lot of points this week. And then Jonathan Taylor, that might be a given, but he had such a breakout performance this week with 3 touchdowns. I forgot the exact yardage, but the Colts are running the offense that the Giants should have been running for years. A great offensive line, a game manager, Daniel Jones, and an elite running back in the backfield. That formula works. We saw it in 2022 with the Giants. We're watching it this year with the Colts. I think Jonathan Taylor will have another big game. And then my final one is Chick Okinawa. Is that how you say the tight end? Okonkwo. He's the leading receiver in Tennessee right now. And I said a few weeks, I think last week, there is no wide receiver or leading receiver in Tennessee. The closest thing is him. I think him and Cam Ward have a similar, repertoire. They have that chemistry. And with Cam Ward, that big play ability, if we see those flashes, the ball's going to him. So definitely start him. My sit-em, as much as I hate it, Brian Thomas Jr., another bad week for the Jaguars receiver. And I think we're at the point right now that we have to start asking the question, is Thomas a one-year wonder? We've seen plenty of guys, especially in Jacksonville. Jackson Blackman comes to mind immediately. We have that big, year one, and then they're just never able to build off it. So I don't trust Thomas at all right now. And then my other guy is Dalton Schultz. Has had limited targets all year. We've talked about Stroud not being able to, not being a great quarterback this year. Schultz has not broken over 40 yards in any game this year. I think the most catch he's had in a game was 3. So that is not somebody you could put into your tight end role right now.
I'm convinced Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence are just perpetually beefing the entire time. Because even last year when Trevor Lawrence was in the lineup, he was fine. Then Mac Jones came in, and that's when Brian Thomas Jr. turned into receiver 4 for those 8 games. So maybe just trade him to San Francisco for a pile of picks, and him and Mac Jones will lead the league again, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
They are perpetually beefing, it feels like. So they just can't click. Kevin,
I think it's Trevor Lawrence.
I wasn't going to go directly there. But yeah, that's pretty accurate because Travis Hunter's not exactly looking sharp right now either. But Kevin, you get to round us out with the AFC West.
Okay, so we're going to start Mr. Trey Tucker. And before this past week, you were saying, who is this guy? But 8 of 9, 18.1 yards per catch, but that's not the what grabs your eye. 3 touchdowns this past week, going up against the Chicago, who didn't have to play CD Lamb this week, but was absolutely road graded by the Detroit Lions. And so I don't trust that defense. So that's a good start. Also, Ashton Genty of the same team, of course, showed some life this past week, 17-64, and going. And the Cowboys looked awful, but Javonte Williams, 10 rushes, 76 yards, 5 of 5 catches of targets. So there's he's at home. Gotta like that. Cortland Sutton of Denver, of course, caught, he was like disappeared the week before, but he found his footing, goes up against the Cincinnati defense. I don't need to say any more about that. So you want to start him. But going up against that same defense, R.J. Harvey is completely put on the bench until he shows something. Because he rushed 2 times. Guess how many yards he had? 2. Okay? All 3 of us could rush the ball 2 times and get 2 yards. So he's going to have to show me some life before I trust him anywhere the rest of the way. And other sits, Dante Thornton. Yeah, if we're going to start these other guys for Las Vegas, I'm going to sit this guy because we can't have 3 guys from on the same team on start. Just can't do it. And then Evan Ingram, okay, of Denver, tight end. Love him. Coming off an injury. He's playing on Monday night. And so if you're waiting for him and then something happens and he doesn't play, you're going to be stuck because he doesn't play till Monday night. And so you don't want that. So get yourself another option as a tight end and get him into the lineup on a Sunday game or whatever. Don't wait around for Evan Ingram. I think that he's going to get things together, but this is not that week.
Absolutely, for sure. Evan Ingram always worries me for sure. And interesting with Ashton Genty, he has like 144 yards on the season, but 146 yards after contact. So they need to let him at least get to the second level before he starts getting hit for a change. He has like 101% of his yards are yards after contact or something ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Like that.
That is absolutely crazy.
Theory. Just let him get past the line, and then we can see him cook a little bit, and maybe have Chip Kelly call better plays. But I'll leave my vendetta against Chip Kelly for another time. So
hey,
now take it.
Maybe Brady could take over the he's loud in the booth with a headset, so let him call a couple plays.
Look, if they let Tom Brady call any of the plays, I'm picking up all of their shorter Caucasian receivers on their roster. I'm drafting them immediately. They are coming right to the team. But
so Josh Beck is just up. His stock goes through the roof. Or Jack Beck, like, whoever
he's like 6'5", though, I think. So he might be too tall. Tom Brady likes him under 6 feet tall, as we know, unless they're Randy Moss.
True.
But you know what? I'm taking all of them regardless. If Tom Brady's calling the plays, he will figure it out. And I'm taking Ashton Genty because that's going to be 40 carries a game because he hates interceptions. And especially when they get into our next segment, also known as the Red Zone. All right, the Red Zone, we are going to talk about some waiver wire ads. Some guys that we really want to pick up that you might be able to pick up off the street. Come in, save your team, turn your season around. We're 3 weeks in. This is where the waiver wire gets a little bit thinner, but you can still find some gems in there. Kevin, I'm going to start with you. We'll get a couple of gems each. Who do you have for a waiver wire pickup this week?
Okay, so I talked about him a moment ago. Trey Tucker is at 2% roster. Okay?
That's going to go up.
This dude gave you 3 touchdowns if you happen to have him on your team. And so I don't think I need to say a whole lot more about that. He won't be at 2% rostered by tomorrow morning. I'll guarantee you that. So if you're in line and you need a wide receiver, I would look at him. And another guy, Tyquan Thornton, Kansas City wide receiver, is at 2.2% rostered. 5 of 9, 71 yards, a touchdown. So you're going to want him. And last guy is Jerry McNichols, Washington running back at 3.1% rostered. And there's all kinds of guys on the Washington team that are running backs, but he showed what he can do on that touchdown run that he put together. So even though there's a lot of competition, I think this is all going to mix in pretty well. And if you need at 3.1% roster, there's not a lot on that I saw that were running backs that are worthy of going out and getting. So if you need a running back, he's the guy that I would look at.
Absolutely. This is a big Trey Tucker fan club over here. He's already on a few of my waivers, so we support that 100%. Brian, what are we looking at for a couple of waiver wire pickups for going into week 4?
Well, my first one is Luther Burden III. We saw last week in Dallas. We saw the big playability out of him. He only had 3 catches, but it was for 101 yards. That's in a touchdown. That's 33 yards per reception. He's not going to, he shouldn't be a starting wide receiver, but as a flex option, he could be a really big boomer bust for you right now. And I really like his trajectory. And Kevin, I'm surprised you're not more high on him. It's your guy, Troy Horton. Had another solid season, solid week this past week. Had 18 points, coming off when we had 11. He could be one of those solid depth guys you stash on your bench for like when those bye weeks come up. And, he's not going to, light the world on fire, but he's just going to give you that solid production you're looking for.
I like it. He's multiple touchdowns. He's I think he could be someone that steps up as that guy opposite Jackson Smith and Jigba since Cooper Kupp is, I hate to say it, but I feel like he has lost that step, unfortunately. I feel like his best years are past him. I think Lane could be somebody that really steps into that role for sure. The one I'm going to throw in here, I'm just going to throw one quick one here. I think Parker Washington from Jacksonville could be an interesting one. We mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence can't connect. Travis Hunter, they don't know what they're doing with it at this point. They've not figured out how they're going to distribute it, but Parker Washington he had 11 targets last week. Only 4 of them connected because, well, that's partially a Trevor Lawrence issue, but he's getting opportunities, and he had plenty of opportunities in week 1 and 2. So Parker Washington, if you're desperate, there's somebody that could be out there. But we're now going to head into the 5th part of our segment where we're going to be taking on the Terminator. All right, for this segment, we'll be featuring RotoBot AI. And for those of you who don't know, RotoBot is an AI fantasy football platform that equips users to make decisions faster and smarter. The AI is able to recognize each user's unique scenario, tailor some roster advice based on what you give them, some starts, some sits, some trades, waivers, and then there's the data elements on top of that. So if you're interested in giving it a try, we used it earlier when we were talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. Download the RotoBot AI app and use code BELLYUP to receive 1 week free. Give it a chance to see if you like it. Try and make fantasy smarter, not harder. But so far, we are battling the bot on the season. And Kevin, you were the first one to beat the bot this last week with going with the receivers. The bot took DK Metcalf, who finished with 12. Vince took CD, who still hurts me. Brian took Malik Neighbors, who Russell Wilson decided to hate. And Kevin took Amon-Ra St. Brown, who gave you a solid 20. So we do have one conquering of the bot this week. Who will be the highest scoring quarterback in week 4? The bot is taking Jordan Love. Vince is taking the low-hanging fruit and Josh Allen. I don't blame him. Kevin, who are you taking as the highest scoring quarterback to beat the bot?
Well, I hate to go along with Vince, but Josh Allen going up at home against New Orleans, that's just too good to pass up. And so I'm going to go with him and just ride it out.
Yeah, I like it. That's a good one. So, Brian, who are you going to take to beat the bot? Are we going all in on Josh Allen, or do we have a mix-up?
I'm going to mix it up and give you Jared Goff. I think that, like you said, the Lions are on a rampage. They had something to prove out for that horrific week 1 showing. Have the Browns this week. I think Jared Goff's going to light it up and remind everybody why this team was a Super Bowl contender coming into the season. I mean, they already have with that game Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can't go wrong there. I think they both also – Jared Goff offers a lot of touchdown opportunities because they're going to go for it on 4th downs all over the place. So I think there's a lot of touchdowns there. And of course, Josh Allen with his legs and an absolutely terrible defense. That is a great option. I'm not part of the contest, but I'm going to throw one in there just for, what's in giggles at this point. So
if you beat the butt, you got to keep doing it, though.
That's right.
All right, the duly noted. We'll see. I'm going to go out on a far limb with this one. We're going to say Daniel Jones is the highest scoring quarterback. He is elevated each week in points. He has those, not the tush push, but the rushing touchdowns when they get in there. It's all right on the 1 yard line. The Colts are the 2022 Eagles with a little less juice at receiver. Elite running back. Well, maybe last year's, I guess. Great running game, competent enough quarterback, good defense. And every time it gets on the 1 yard line, Daniel Jones QB sneak. I think he could get you 2 rushing touchdowns, maybe 2 passing touchdowns. We saw what the Eagles did last week against the Rams secondary. If you can stop Jared Verse in that front line just a little bit, if you can stop them from assaulting your quarterback, the back end can get had. So just saying, maybe there'll be some opportunities there. And Daniel Jones has made me look stupid all season. So we're gonna go and keep riding with it. But so I am DJ with High Low Sports Podcast. That is Kevin Wilson with Belly Up Fantasy Baseball and Football, and Brian with 3rd and 10 Podcast. We appreciate you all so much for joining us here today, and we'll see you all again next week on Belly Up Football Live.